everyone. We are on Act 4. I'm not sure exactly how many scenes I want to get through in this one video. I guess we're going to kind of go with the flow and see just how many I get through. Alright, so we are beginning with Act 4. We have just completed the closet scene with Hamlet and his mother. And so at this point, our action is going to move to a room in the castle. And we have the king, queen, Rosencrantz, and Guildenstern present. So the queen comes in, and king goes, "There's matters in these sighs, these profound heaves you must translate. 'Tis fit we understand them. Where is your son?" So obviously the queen has ran in there going, oh my gosh, because he's like, matter in these sighs, these profound heaves. So she's like freaking out. And the queen goes, "Bestow this place on us a little while," which basically she's telling Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to scat so she can talk to the king. She goes, "Ah, my good lord, what I have seen tonight." And the king goes, "What, Gertrude? How does Hamlet? How is Hamlet?" And she says, "Mad as the sea and when both contend which is the mightier. In his lawless fit behind the arrest," and remember the arrest is the curtain, hearing something stir, whips out his rapier, which is his sword, and cries, "A rat! A rat!" And in this brainish apprehension, stab, 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 kills the unseen good old man. And of course she's referring to Polonius. And the king is like, oh, heavy deed. That's his bro. And he keeps on, "It had been so with us had we been there." And when he says that, he means it had been so with us. It would have been me had I have been there who would have been stabbed. So that's what he's lamenting. And he goes, "His liberty is full of threats to all." He's talking about Hamlet's madness is full of threats to everybody. "To you yourself, to us, to everyone. Alas, how shall this bloody deed be answered? It will be laid to us, whose providence should have kept short, restrained, and out of haunt this mad young man." So Claudius is lamenting the fact that he didn't do something sooner to prevent Hamlet's madness from harming somebody, rather. And so he goes, "But so much was our love, we would not understand what was most fit." So he's claiming that he loved him so much that he couldn't bear to think that he was mad enough to actually kill somebody. He goes, "But like the owner of a foul disease, to keep it from divulging, let it feed even on the pith of life. Where is he gone?" So now the Claudius wants to know where Hamlet is. And the queen goes, "To draw apart the body he hath killed." So he's like going to stow the body somewhere. "Or whom his very madness, like some ore among a mineral of metals base, shows itself pure. He weeps for what is done." So here, this is interesting because from the point of view of the play, we don't know if Gertrude knows that Claudius murdered King Hamlet. We don't know if Gertrude is in on trying to get rid of Hamlet or deceive Hamlet. We're not sure whose side she's on. But this particular line is very telling because she claims that Hamlet is weeping for what he did. Now, the closet scene we watched, Hamlet didn't seem to be very sorry about stabbing Polonius at all. So I think when Gertrude says this, as an audience member, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's trying to save Hamlet. She's trying to somehow protect him. So this is very interesting in her character and when we begin to question her motives and if she knows about the murder of King Hamlet. So then the king dismisses her. "Oh, Gertrude, come away. The sun no sooner shall the mountains touch, but we will ship him hence, and this vile deed we must with all our majesty and skill both countenance and excuse. Ho, Guildenstern!" So he calls in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he goes, "Friends both, go join you with some further aid. Hamlet in madness hath Polonius slain." And notice that that's that cool little couplet. So aid and slain wrong. "And from his mother's closet hath he dragged him. Go seek him out, speak fair, and bring the body into the chapel. I pray you hasten this." So he sent Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to find Hamlet, who is lugging Polonius around. And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern exit. He looks at Gertrude. He's like, come, Gertrude, we'll call up our wisest friends and let them know both what we mean to do and what's untimely done, so haply slander, whose whisper o'er the world's diameter, as level as the cannon to his blank, transports his poisoned shot, may miss or name, and hit the woundless air. Oh, come away, my soul is full of discord and dismay. So at this point, Claudius is on damage control. He's like, okay, we need to make sure that people aren't talking about this. We need to make sure that we can do some serious damage control until we can harness Hamlet in. And then they both exit. And then we enter Act 4, Scene 2. And this is in another room in the castle. And Hamlet, I love this because on stage, Hamlet's like safely stowed. So he's gotten rid of the body. He's placed it somewhere. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern they're looking for him. They haven't quite entered on stage yet, so Hamlet's kind of there by himself. And then we hear, Hamlet! Lord Hamlet, wherefore art thou? Hamlet! And then Rosencrantz comes in and he goes, what have you done, my lord, with the dead body? And Hamlet's like, compounded it with dust whereto 'tis kin. So he's being real dodgy. He's like super dodgy. And Rosencrantz goes, tell us where 'tis, that we may take it thence and bear it to the chapel. And Hamlet's like, do not believe it. And Rosencrantz is like totally confused. He's like, don't believe it. I asked you where the body was. Don't believe. Believe what? And Hamlet goes, that I can keep your counsel and not mine own. Besides, to be demanded of a sponge, what replication should be made by the son of a king. This is really interesting because when he calls Rosencrantz a sponge, basically what he's saying is that he understands the motives of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern at this point is that they're like sponges, that they go around, they soak up all this information, and then Claudius wrings them out and gets all the gossip and the dirt and what sort of knowledge they have of Hamlet. And so he's calling them basically spies that are trying to narc him out. And then Rosencrantz goes, take you me for a sponge, my lord. And he says, aye, sir, that soaks up the king's countenance, his rewards, his authorities, but such officers do the king's best serve in the end. He keeps them like an ape in the corner of his jaw, first mouthed, to be last swallowed. When he needs what you have gleaned it, is but squeezing you, and sponge you shall be dry again. So the fact that they're just being used, that they're being used by the king. And Rosencrantz is pretending he doesn't understand. He's like, I don't understand you, my lord. What are you saying? And then Hamlet goes, I'm glad of it. A knavish speech sleeps in a foolish ear. So Hamlet here just kind of gets him with a 1-2 punch because he's like, well, of course you don't understand. Clever words, clever speech always falls on a foolish deaf man's ear, as if a fool would be deaf to clever speech. So I think that's kind of neat. And then Rosencrantz goes, my lord, you must tell us where the body is and go with us to the king. And Hamlet goes, the body is with the king, but the king is not with the body. The king is a thing. Now this is interesting and it sounds a little loopy, but if you think about it, the body is with the king. So if the body is dead, then Hamlet is referring to King Hamlet because both are dead, so they are together. Okay? But then he says, but the king is not with the body. And this time when he refers to the king, he's talking about Claudius because Claudius isn't with the body. Claudius doesn't know where the body is. And then Hamlet goes, the king is a thing. So you have to figure out what's going on. And Guildenstern's like, a thing, my lord? He's totally confused. And then Hamlet goes, of nothing, bring me to him, hide fox and doll actor. So he's kind of getting bored of being mad. And at this point, he's just like, just take me to Claudius. Do whatever. I'm bored of you. I'm bored of this game. Let's just get this done with. And then they exit. And then we have Act 4, Scene 30. And we enter into another room in the castle. And in this room is the king. Pull it down some. So the king says, I have sent to seek him and to find the body. How dangerous it is that this man goes loose. And of course Claudius is afraid, right? Because by this point, Claudius knows that Hamlet is onto him. So he goes, "Yet must not we put the strong law on him? He's loved of the distracted multitude, who like not in their judgment, but their eyes. And where 'tis so, the offender's scourge is weighed, but never the offense." Now this is really interesting, because when Claudius says we must not put the strong law on him, he's loved by the multitudes. We get an idea that Hamlet is much loved by Denmark. So if Claudius treats Hamlet poorly or puts him in stocks or like beheads him or does something terrible, Denmark is totes going to turn on King Claudius because Hamlet is beloved. So Claudius has to be very careful here about how he handles Hamlet. Okay? So he goes, "To bear all smooth and even, this sudden sending him away must seem deliberate pause. Diseases desperate grown by desperate appliance are relieved or not at all." So the king's like, "I'm just going to make it look like we're going to send him away. Like he just needs, some R&R. Let's just send him away for a bit." And he's like, "And we're going to do it very quietly and very smoothly." And then Rosencrantz enters, and king's like, "Oh, how now? What hath befallen?" So like, "What's going on? Did you find him? Tell me what happened." And Rosencrantz goes, "Where the dead body is bestowed, my lord, we cannot get from him." So Hamlet's being super dodgy still. He's not telling him where the dead body is. And the king goes, "But where is he?" And Rosencrantz, "Without, my lord, guarded, to know your pleasure." And the king says, "Bring him before us." And Rosencrantz, "Ho, Guildenstern, bring in my lord." And then Hamlet and Guildenstern walk into the room. Now, the king asks, "Now, Hamlet, where's Polonius?" And Hamlet here is very clever, and he says, "At supper." And the king's confused. He's like, "He's at supper. Where's supper?" And Hamlet goes, "Not where he eats, silly, but where he is eaten. A certain convocation of politic worms are in him." So Hamlet's kind of flipped the tide. He's like, "Oh, he's at supper." And the king's like, "What's he doing at supper?" And he's like, "No, he's not at supper. He is supper." So that's kind of clever that he does that there. And then he continues, "We fat all creatures elf to fat us, and we fat ourselves from maggots. Your fat king and your lean beggars, but variable service. 2 dishes, but to 1 table, that's the end." So in this particular portion, Hamlet is talking about how even though people, the king is a king, and the people honor him, and the lowly beggar is the lowly beggar. However, in death, we're all food for maggots. So basically, we're all equal. So that's what Hamlet's saying here. So it's a comment on the social hierarchy of the time. And the king goes, "Alas, alas!" And Hamlet goes, "A man may fish with the worm that hath eat of a king, and eat of the fish that hath fed of the worm." So this is all circle of life stuff that Hamlet's talking about, but also social hierarchy. And the king goes, what does thou mean by this?" And Hamlet goes, "Nothing but to show you how a king may go of progress through the guts of a beggar." So if a worm, like a maggot, eats the king, and then the beggar finds the little worm and he uses it to fish, then he catches the fish, and the fish ate the worm that ate the king, and then the beggar eats the fish that ate the king. So he's basically eating the king. So circle of life. And then he goes, "Where's Polonius?" And Hamlet goes, "In heaven. Send thither to see. If your messenger find him not there, seek him in the other place yourself." This was a very clever way to tell the king to go to hell. Basically, he was like, if Polonius is heaven, then you should send somebody. However, if he's in hell, well, go there yourself and find him. And then he says, "But indeed, if you find him not within this month, you shall nose him as you go up the stairs in the lobby." So when he says you nose him, he means you'll smell him. So now Claudius knows that the body is somewhere near the stairs into the lobby. So the king sends some attendants, "Go seek him there." And Hamlet goes, "He will stay till you come." So he's like, Polonius will be there when you get there. He's not going anywhere. So that's pretty clever. And then the attendants leave. And then the king looks at Hamlet and he goes, "Hamlet, this deed for thine especial safety." And I like that because he's like, "For your own safety, since you killed Polonius," it's like, "which we do tender as we dearly grieve for that which thou hast done, must send thee hence with fiery quickness, Therefore prepare thyself. The bark is ready, and the wind at help. And the bark is the ship. And the wind at help. The associates tend, and everything is bent for England. And Hamlet feigns surprise. Huh, for England? And the king's like, Hamlet. And Hamlet's like, good. And the king's like, so is it, if thou knewest our purpose? And Hamlet goes, I see a cherub that sees them, but come for England, farewell, dear mother. And the king goes, thy loving father, Hamlet. And Hamlet goes, my father, or my mother, father, and mother is man and wife is one flesh, and so my mother, come for England. So again, here we have this weird sort of mad banter that's throwing back and forth. So he exits, and the king continues on his own. And this speech is very, very, very telling. He says, follow him at foot, tempt him with speed abroad. He's talking to his attendant. Delay it not, I'll have him hence tonight. Away, for everything is sealed and done. That else leans on the affair, pray you make haste. So then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern leave. And then the king is speaking to himself. He's alone on stage. And he says, and, England, if my love thou hold'st at aught, as my great power thereof may give thee sense, since yet thy cicatrice looks raw and red after the Danish sword, and thy free awe pays homage to us, thou mayest not coldly set our sovereign process, which imports it full by letters conjoining to the effect the present death of Hamlet. So here he has written a little letter on arrival there to give the letter to the King of England, and the King of England is to assassinate Hamlet. So, and he continues, and thou must cure me till I know 'tis done, howe'er my haps, my joys were ne'er begun. And so then we exit. So the king is getting ready to take Hamlet out of the picture, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are going to be instrumental in this. So we are at the 17-minute mark. I say we stop this video here, and we will pick up with Act 4, Scene 4 in the next video. Okay, bye y'all.